We have what has turned into a very busy Browns film breakdown for you today. We're going to talk about the stadium approval that has paved the way, the Art Modell law for the Browns to build in Brook Park. We got to talk about pretty big roster shakeup at Edge, what that means. And then the Browns release some training camp dates. So we will get to all of that and more. The latest Browns film breakdown right now. Welcome in, everybody, to Browns Film Breakdown Thursday edition. Busy day, obviously. I mean, like, between last night and today, the most news we've had for a minute with what the Browns are doing to the roster, where they're going with their new stadium, all of it. So let's start there, and we're going to start there. But first, 30% off going on a few more days through the end of the month. Take advantage of it. You should take advantage of it, or have somebody you know take advantage of it. We very much appreciate any support we can get, but we really love the offering right now to get you locked in for the 25 season, 26 off-season cycles that matter, and give us a fair evaluation. I think you'll love what we do, complimentary to your podcast with film and newsletters. Again, deep Browns, passionate analysis that I think you guys will enjoy. Some of you are already enjoying. If you do nothing else, we would appreciate it very much if you just told somebody about this podcast or this website. A Browns fan in your life, hey, I heard about Browns Film Breakdown. That's a good one. I should tell them about it. It enhances their experience, and it's a fantastic community. Take advantage of it. Do it. Subscribe to everything we're on. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, everything. I think we're even on Facebook. Look at that. We're everywhere. So join us. Follow everything we do. Enhance your Browns experience. We love what you guys bring as a passionate fan, and we're trying to complement that every day for you. So take advantage of it. 30% off. Great opportunity. Now, start with the stadium. So the Browns have been doing a run around here in the public circuit about going to Brook Park for quite some time. They wouldn't have bought up the land in Brook Park if they didn't know they could get here. They had to know it all along. People have been telling you this. I've been telling you this. Other websites have been telling you this. This is all a public show. They were going to always get to Brook Park. That's why they've gone the steps that they've gone to get where they need to get. Could some last minute home run offering come in from the downtown Lakefront district and figure it out? Sure, it's possible, but not likely to happen. And we are now further along in this process than we've ever been. They reversed the Art Modell law that keeps the Browns from moving out of downtown Cleveland. So everything worked its way through, the House and Senate, and there's an approval in place for the $600 million. With the state is contributing to the project. So Cuyahoga County insisting it won't help. We'll see if that, or cooperate, comes to fruition. But since the Browns are keeping their team inside the same county, it is going to be fair game. So they can move out of downtown. So they revise the law, makes it, the legal issue moot. All of that stuff is in place, and it kind of fitted into a bigger bill that had a bunch of stuff in it. But nonetheless, what you should know is the Browns will now be in Brook Park. The stadium renderings are out there. You've seen them. There's video now of what it'll look like. I get used to it. So 4 more years, I think, in the stadium, and then they'll be off to Brook Park. It's going to be here before you know it. It's going to be big. It's going to be beautiful. But I also understand people who wanted the tax dollars and other things to go elsewhere, but it's the world we live in. So Browns are contributing half. Ohio is contributing the other half. And also saw today that the Bengals struck a deal to keep their stadium in downtown Cincinnati, going to do some improvements. I think it keeps them there through like 2036, something like that. So I know that the Bengals have been pressing for things from their side as well to get some help, the same way the Browns are. I don't have the details on that, but I do know they've been doing the same. That's the stadium news. Just know the Art Modell law that was like a last-ditch effort to try to keep the Browns in place has been amended to keep them within the same county, which obviously puts them within the means to make the stadium happen. Brook Park. There you go. That's what's going to happen. I think we all knew it, but nonetheless, there you go. We have 8 training camp dates, and I want to make sure I get these right for you guys. Pull it up in front of me here. I always have to keep shuffling things around, but yeah, there's a pretty much the end of July and the 1st of August. So they're going to do, let me see here, dates. The 25th and 26th are going to be the first 2 sessions. One's an afternoon, one's a morning, and then they're going to do a day off. I don't know if they're going to have a day off, but they're not allowing people in on the 27th. And the 28th, 29th, and 30th of July, they will get in for those 3 straight sessions, alternating between the 2 o'clock and the 9:30 a.m. setup. The 31st, they'll be off. Then they're back for the 1st and 2nd, Friday and Saturday of August, a day off from at least public viewing. And then they're back on August 4th for their final session. So, yeah, they've got 8 of them. That's reducing pretty much every year. But I think that 8 number is going to be par for the course. But remember, the first 2 weeks of August here, once they get cooking, are going to be a lot of joint practice sessions and preseason games on the road. So those will be like the entire month of August will be them out in Carolina and in doing the things that they do in those joint practice sessions and spending time there. So get your viewing in. I think those tickets will be tougher to come by as the sessions reduce. I think season ticket holders will have a great opportunity to do that first and foremost, and then they'll open up to some other places. I will say I prefer to sit up in the stands. So I don't like to waste a media credential that could go to somebody else who's down asking questions. Maybe get a question and maybe don't. But the sideline viewing of NFL athletes, not fun. Can't get much from it. Can't see what you need to see. I prefer to sit up high in the stands, top of the bleachers, watch from that perspective and share it with you. So that's my plan, is to go with a standard ticket and sit up high and report what I see from up high to just you guys. If you come across tickets and want to share, jump in the chat at Substack, DM me on Twitter, do whatever you can, Jake@brownsfilmbreakdown.com. I would love to take a ticket to go to these. I'm going to work to try to find one for each of these, and we'll see. I'll probably come up with them relatively easily, but any help we can get to get some tickets and maybe have some folks come too and catch each other there and meet up would be exciting. So there you go. Camp dates. If you got some extra tickets to those, swing through and let me know and we'll take those from you and make sure they go to good use to bring insights to the website and to you guys specifically. All right. Next point of topic before we move on is the Browns made some roster moves. So if you've paid attention, there's been a bit of a logjam at defensive end, and how they're going to operate this, we'll see. And there are always cap casualty possibilities that come up. The Browns burnt through their first 2 post-June 1 cuts, cut them early situations, because you can obviously tag or delegate a guy post-June 1, but then he's the ability to sign with another team, and that doesn't become official until June 1st. You can only do 2 of those. Well, the Browns used Dalvin Tomlinson and Juan Thornhill for those. So if they wanted to do this with anybody else, Conklin was one possibility. There were a few others, but Okoronkwo or Ogbo Okoronkwo was another one that they could do. Now, you would ask why. I personally would prefer to keep him. Stylistically, his ability to speed rush, bend the edge, more valuable than you think, especially considering how most offensive tackles are plotting these days. And he brings a different skill set to what they have. I think he's got a better mixture of speed and power than Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who is, again, a young guy who's 4 years into his rookie career, his early NFL career. He's 26, and he got 1 year, $4 million from the Browns. The NFL wasn't very high on him, but that doesn't mean he still can't find a way to contribute. I just thought Ogbo is a better player. But the forefront of this, and what I think the deal was really made for, is to give Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire more snaps, right? They're going to back up. One of them is they'll probably rotate together and then use Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to play behind Myles Garrett and rotate in there. That's my best guess. It does limit a little bit of their effectiveness and depth. We'll see if there's another person they bring in, maybe a waiver wire addition, or maybe they like Aiden Hutchinson, this rookie who's a bit of a hybrid Sam Kamara type that they might keep. I'm not sure, but it does limit some things, but it does get his money off the books. $7 million come off the books as far as his cap number. So it was not guaranteed. So there were no guarantees left on the deal. And there was an option bonus. So you're asking, why would they do this? Well, there was an option bonus set to hit at the end of August. So a couple ways to look at it. Could they have done this at the very beginning of June 2nd? Yeah, they in theory could have. Maybe they just didn't have their mind made up. Maybe they needed to see Alex Wright in person at OTAs and minicamp. Maybe any number of things. But they also didn't wait, so it's not awful. They could have waited until the end of training camp and the preseason to do this sort of thing, but they didn't do that. So they got him. Listen, would it be more ideal for Ogbo to, go out and have a chance at the beginning of free agency to find his next spot? Of course. But in some of these cases, you only have 2 June 1st cap casualty situations. So you are looking at figuring out ways to maneuver the cap. And I think that's what is going on here in a sense. Is it the right decision? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if the depth gets challenged. Alex Wright coming off an injury, some other guys figuring out where they're going to be playing more of. You got, Mike Hall coming back off an injury. They've limited themselves a little bit here on the edge to an extent. Doesn't mean they're done. Doesn't mean they won't maybe add somebody of some relevance, but they did limit themselves a little bit. We'll see. Side eye, kind of turn your head a little bit. I like Ogbo. It's not going to end their season. It's not going to change everything or much at all. I think it made them a more well-rounded defense, a more well-rounded edge group, personally, but I, again, don't think this is something that we should be spending all of our time in anguish about. I just expected him to contribute this year because I didn't think the number was that heinous, right? To go ahead and operate that sort of contract for another year, kind of keep the depth in line and figure things out. But again, they might feel great about Alex Wright and they might feel great about Isaiah McGuire, and we don't really need it. So we'll save it, right? Another possibility is that they tried to do a Jerome Ford-like reduction in number, right? He doesn't have a guaranteed number for this year. So if he doesn't have a guarantee, let's set it up where we do guarantee him some money, but we reduce the cap number, reduce the amount of money he's paid, and we'll set up the guarantee that way. Could have done that, could have tried. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, because it would have made sense for both sides. But if Ogbo thinks he's worth more money than what that reduced number looks like, he could just say, I'm not doing that. And the Browns are forced into, going into a cut situation. Or maybe the Browns didn't offer it. It's all conjecture. We don't know. I just thought it would have made sense for both sides. So that's where it lands. They're down a defensive end, and we'll see if they try to replace him or if they just feel so good about the group that it doesn't matter. They're going to be fine as is. But kind of a bigger discussion about Andrew Berry and guys he signs in free agency, finishing contracts. It's not great. We'll talk through it. But also, I think the rest of the league isn't great either on multi-year signed veteran free agents rendering themselves a second contract with a new team. It just doesn't happen as much as you think. So while we're honed in and specific to the Browns, and feeling some sort of way, you got to look at the league as a whole and understand that's just not something that happens all too common. So there you go. That's a topic for another day. The Browns also made a bunch of new additions, and I put this in the news tab on the website, the .com, and you'll see that in your Substack app. Bunch of new hires and role changes in their front office. A pretty cool one is James Cook, who's a senior director of player development now, formerly with the NFL's international brand in their London office. So he's got 6 years of experience working across several key projects in the NFL internationally, including their International Player Pathway Program, which we know the Browns have had multiple players in their system using that pathway program, right? So he's been involved, an integral part of that. Flag football, the NFL Academy, and NFL Africa. He's most recently served as the head of player development for the NFL's newest academy based in Asia Pacific. So that's pretty cool. He's been at the forefront of a lot of these things. But he was born and raised in Surrey, England, and played quarterback in Europe for 10 years, representing Great Britain at the U19 and senior level. So he's a senior director of player development. It's a big role. It's a big title. It's a big offering, but obviously a guy who's been very successful in the NFL for some time. So be fascinated to see what comes of that. And then Sean Herrock, who is a senior college personnel advisor now for the Browns, comes back to the Browns. He was formerly with the Browns before, went to Las Vegas. He got 30 years of NFL scouting experience, two-time Super Bowl champion, senior roles across multiple organizations. Like I said, most recently Las Vegas, assistant director of college scouting with Green Bay, director of college scouting, interim general manager in the Las Vegas Raiders, and personnel advisor with the Raiders. So from 19 to 21, he was a scout and national scout with the Browns. He began his career with the Falcons, was an offensive lineman at Richmond back in the day. Just a guy with a bunch of experience coming back to do a very important role. I won't bore you with the rest of them. You can check them out if you would like, but there are a bunch of changes the Browns have made, and this is kind of a customary thing. A lot of young people involved, man. A lot of young scouting assistants they're bringing in, early graduates, some software development guys, and then an interesting football research analyst, Ethan Wiseman's another one worth reading, who's going to leverage tools like PFF and XOS to inform coaching and operational decisions. A Harvard graduate, so the Ivy League connection. So he's got connection to that football program. He's got, a ton of experience across analytics, strategy, operations, video, and recruiting. So that's what you do at Harvard. To bring that to Cleveland, we'll see. Seems like the Browns on the forefront of that stuff anyway. But again, a bunch of new promotions and roles and stuff you can go in there and check out. But I thought I'd mention those guys specifically. That's everything that has happened with the Browns, and it has been busy, and that catches you up. All right. Okoronkwo decision. We'll see how it plays out. That's the big news of the day. They did also, I'm remiss if I did not mention that they brought in another kicker who has been around the organization. Andre Schmidt is how it's pronounced. Even though it's spelled SZMYT, it's pronounced Schmidt. So he's been around off and on. They brought him in as a practice squad player. I think 2023 they did bring him in as an undrafted free agent. He's out of Syracuse, had a nice career. Groza Award winner at Syracuse. Was brought into Cleveland UDFA in 23. Then he spent time as a part of the St. Louis Battlehawks in the UFL, where he went 19 of 21, including 4 of 5 from 50-plus yards. And then some time last year on the practice squad. He's been around. They know what they have, and I think they're hoping that they can leverage that competition to bring out the best in Dustin Hopkins, who we know was really bad last year, but really good the year before. But the pressure's on for him to be a much better kicker this year. If not, it seems like Andre Schmidt, who I think I said, Andrew, I apologize for screwing that first name up. Andre Schmidt is going to be at the forefront of trying to get that kicking opportunity. So now you're caught up. That's everything. I want to share the back half of this podcast is an interview with Cleveland.com's More Sports4CLE. I jump in and discuss a bunch of different things with their host, and Dave's a great guy. Happy to go on their show. Sometimes I want to share them with you. You can find those pretty much every day on their YouTube channel, but we discuss quarterback, defense, Mason Graham, all that stuff in case you've missed it. So stick around, check that out. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Greg Rosenthal from NFL Network on the Browns' starting quarterback position and who he thinks it can be.
I think Joe Flacco will win the job, and my main reason is just watching how Kenny Pickett has handled his last two opportunities. The film does not lie, and you look at two organizations in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia who both need quarterbacks, who essentially gave up on Kenny Pickett. So we know what Joe Flacco can do. He can play at a credible level. He went 4-1 with the Browns before. When the Steelers traded Kenny Pickett just a few years ago, all they had to do was move down from the 3rd to the 4th round in order to do so. Last year, the Eagles essentially gave Kenny Pickett away. So if we're going to spend this whole offseason saying Howie Roseman is the best general manager in the game, and they could certainly use a good backup at a low price, and he basically decided to give Kenny Pickett away because Tanner McKee is a better quarterback than him, then ultimately I think Joe Flacco is going to be a better quarterback than him, and Shedeur Sanders will wind up being a backup or a third-string quarterback.
I wonder if he can tell me the lottery numbers tonight. I get what he's saying relative to Kenny Pickett. You could also say that Joe Flacco couldn't beat out Anthony Richardson. He was given the job in Indianapolis, and they moved back to Anthony Richardson, who hasn't played well. Let's welcome in Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Jake, there's not a clear cut, this guy is the guy. I do think it'll probably be either Pickett or Flacco.
Yeah, I have a hard time envisioning that you're going to start one of these rookies right out the gate. I think that based on the history of Joe, him making it 17 games feels pretty rare. Even if he's the starter, right? He has not been able to do that sort of thing in a long time. And sometimes it's not self-inflicted. It's just the play either sort of tapers out, it goes on a hot streak, and then things kind of maybe go cold, and that forces the hand. And maybe like you had mentioned there with Anthony Richardson, we're going to put him back in. I just think the days of Joe Flacco playing 17 games and doing so at a above average to high level feel like a sort of bit of the past there. So it's not that I don't think that he can. It's just that it's like the recent data tells us that's not something that's going to happen. So, Pickett, I've felt relatively comfortable in saying I don't believe in the decision they made to bring him in, other than if it's a timeline-based thing and you really wanted some sort of a quarterback who had a starting presence, and we didn't know if we were going to get to Flacco. Maybe he wasn't going to sign. Maybe there was a thought he might retire. So you made that move to have some veteran presence, or at least a guy who has started some games in the NFL before the draft. But then obviously you get a green light from Flacco. So it's a little hard without being inside the walls of Berea to know the decision-making timeline on some of that stuff. But to the point Greg was just making in that clip, like, I don't really envision Kenny Pickett being the answer here. But I also think there is a desire to play a veteran of some capacity. So he's going to get a chance to compete with Flacco to start the year. And as we know, those first 6 games on the schedule are pretty daunting. So is there a world where one of those two rookies between Gabriel and Sanders has a lights out training camp and, really solves things in a very serious way? Yeah. I mean, like that's happened in the history of the league, right? You don't have to look too far back in the history of things to figure out that there have been some 3rd round guys that have figured it out. And even Brock Purdy, as a 7th round Mr. Irrelevant, found some success by the end of his rookie season to give himself a chance to start, right? So it's not impossible, but like to start the year, I know that's what most people are concerned about. It's looked like everything I have seen that Flacco is a leg up on all of this. He was around in 23. He's been around Kevin before. The offense, they are trying to really kind of put themselves back in a position to run. So naturally, Joe has seen a lot of ball. The arm is still alive, and he knows the offense. It's no surprise that he would be ahead of everybody else right now. So that's where I think Flacco starts the year, but I do think as the year wears on, based on ample evidence we have, both of these rookies will probably find a chance to play, and we'll see which one steps up to the plate and maybe capitalizes on that opportunity. So it's not the greatest quarterback scenario to be in, but they're trying to just piece together some answers here, and we'll see what they come up with.
They're trying to find competent quarterback play, and the way I look at it, you got 4 chances, so we'll see. I'm curious. You did this on BrownsFilmBreakdown.com, Jake. Lingering questions. Mike Hall Jr., Greg Newsome, and receiver depth. And receiver depth, man, if Jerry Jeudy gets banged up, I'm concerned about the options.
I think that's fair. I mean, they're walking a fine line here. There is obviously some history with Cedric Tillman across 2 years now of injury issues. So while you like Cedric and you saw some really good things out of him, both inside and outside alignment based in the time that he got a real chance to shine when Jameis came in and they had traded Amari Cooper, I do think there's a good player there. But like you said, between Jerry Jeudy and Cedric, those are your guys that you think are difference makers on Sunday. Outside of that, then you start to really look at it, and it's really challenging to feel like there's a bunch of competence behind them. I mean, Jamari Thrash is a late round selection who didn't have much of an opportunity earned in his rookie year to play. He's had a nice string of run here in sessions in the summer. We'll see if that translates to training camp, joint practices, preseason, to give him an opportunity. Then it's Deontay Johnson, who, we just saw yesterday talk about it was too cold to go into a game in Baltimore. And it's quite clear that while I believe Deontay has some talent still left in him as he approaches 30, it's not mentally a player who's willing to accept it. At least he hasn't been. Maybe there's a reality check in place here to play a role instead of trying to be the guy who stands out between his time in Pittsburgh and his brief time in Carolina. But you don't feel as good as you would like to about the certainty that he can be your third guy who can play. And again, Deontay can play inside, mostly outside, but he can get inside too. But yeah, I mean, it's a thin group. You got Jerry Jeudy's got an injury history of some soft tissue stuff that's come up in his Denver days. He had a great year last year, and he looks really good, so there's no reason to be concerned. But you always in the NFL know that depth gets challenged in so many ways. And then we know a couple of years of Cedric Tillman have left us a little concerned between concussions and some stuff that he's dealt with. So, yeah, as far as like a lot of positions on the roster, you feel like they can absorb an injury or two. But wide receiver, it's going to be slim. That's why I kind of think that they are really side-eyeing maybe adding another guy in the stretch run here leading up to training camp, or maybe even in the process of training camp, because I just think that the concern is it's valid. Let's put it that way.
What about Greg Newsome and Mike Hall? Just kind of thoughts on those two. And Newsome, they're paying him a lot of money that they picked up that fifth-year rookie option.
Right, yeah. It's hard to give up on corners, when you take them in the first round. It's just really challenging. Unless they're absolutely proven that they can't play, it's likely they're going to get that fifth-year option picked up. Now, the question for Newsome is like, where's the value versus what they're asking him to do, right? So he's an inside guy in the last 3 years. Now, when he arrived in the league his first year, and it feels crazy to think that Greg Newsome has been around 4 years, but that's the case. He was an outside corner predominantly at Northwestern, and he comes in and he plays outside corner here his first year. And I thought there were some really promising moments. I think based on body type and a desired physicality, that's the location that makes the most sense for me for him. They draft Martin Emerson the next year. They feel like he's an outside guy predominantly because he doesn't have the shiftiness to play inside. And in the first year of a system between Newsome's shift inside and Emerson playing outside, in what Joe Woods used to do, which was a more dense zone defense approach, he thrived. Emerson thrived. Newsome was adjusting to a new role, had some nice moments. Then you bring in Jim Schwartz, who's more of a man coverage guy, and that's not, especially against the twitchier receivers, a thing that Emerson is able to consistently win, because he's a bigger body type who doesn't have the quickest hips in the world. So, I think the last 2 years decline in terms of what we thought he could be based on his rookie year versus what he was. And, you started to see defenses, or sorry, excuse me, opposing offenses figure out how to pick on him, it's tricky. I think that, like, for me, you're in this big transition period for a lot of names on this roster, trying to prove if they're long-term worthy. And I find myself really being interested in what does a Greg Newsome relationship look like beyond this year? Well, is that a slot corner role? I don't think he's best fit for that, because I don't think he likes to play physical football, and I don't think he's as good in there as he could be, versus maybe some other. And again, this has always been an NFL position at slot corner that you could really find that cheaper player. So it's harder to find outside corners. I would prefer, just me, to see if this final year, if there's more of a successful outside corner player for Newsome, and that's how you extend the relationship into some sort of manageable second contract. Whereas I think inside, I just think that's ultimately he's playing a very replaceable brand of football on the inside. So I just, again, one guy behind a screen here, but I feel like that's the place I would be most curious for Newsome, is playing predominantly outside, whereas the last 3 years he's played inside. And while he's not bad, I would not put him as an awful player there. I just feel like his skill set is best suited outside, and you can find and figure out some different ways to get players who can play in the slot. I think that's been proven over years in the NFL. I mean, even a guy like Mike Hilton, who's sitting there in free agency still, is a guy who's had a lot of success. So that's where I'm like kind of raising my eyebrow and tree, because as far as what Jim Schwartz runs, the Martin Emerson connection is, it just, I don't ever think it's going to be as good as if it was a more dense zone defense. Like, think of Richard Sherman, and I'm not saying Martin Emerson is Richard Sherman, but that type of player. Those Seattle teams lived in cover three. He was an excellent cover three zone corner who could play with range and anticipation from an off alignment. That's more of what Emerson's good at. He can match bigger body receivers with that sort of stuff. But when offenses figure out how to get him aligned where they want to get him aligned, and they put those twitchy or quick hips wide receiver types against him, think of like what happened against Malik Neighbors last year. That's when you run into some real issues there. So, yeah, if offenses are dictating decision-making with defense, it's not a place that you want to be in. So I just would be interested in, hey, we had this first-round pick. We tried it for a few years with with Newsome playing predominantly inside. And even there was a time where he wanted to be traded, but you work it out, solve it. Let's see if he can play outside a bit more, and then you solve that issue, maybe having a couple outside corners, and you maybe get a relatively functional deal on that. So I that's a spot I'm interested in. As far as Mike Hall goes, it was more just a lingering question about, we haven't heard much.
Yep.
The MCL tear. From everything I gather, he is very much on track to be ready to go by the beginning of the season, hopefully week 1. He'll probably start the year here in training camp on maybe the PUP list or working on the side. Maybe he avoids PUP, but he's working on the side. I just don't think you're going to see a ton of him in preseason until maybe the final week or so, and hopefully they have him ramped up and ready to go by the start of week 1. But that's the timeline I've heard, so on track there.
All right, Jake Burns and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, film breakdown, video analysis, NFL quarterbacks under center. The Browns plan to do that some. We'll take a look at it. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Jake, we're going to do a film breakdown of this in a minute that you did for BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. What's the upside? Why do teams play under center? Why are teams getting away from playing under center relative to the quarterback?
Yeah. I mean, if you followed football long enough, under center passing game is just it's a way of the past. I think it's, again, if you have followed the game for a long time, you know that there was a very big era that creeped into the 2000s where it was, hey, we don't throw from the shotgun. We don't do anything from the shotgun, right? That's not a thing that you watched Friday Night Football across the country. It was rare. And then it started to make its way into the mainstream. Coaches started to figure out the advantages of being in the gun and putting defenders in uncomfortable positions and making them, you got these kids who come up through the ranks, and by the time they reach high school, they're not comfortable defending the pass as they are playing forward, playing the run. So it's become a bigger thing over time. Obviously trickles into the college game, and it's grown and it's manifested more layers to it. And it's worked its way to the world where, most teams, when throwing the football, live in gun, right? Or most teams in the college world and high school world live in a situation where they're almost entirely operating out of the gun. They don't really even Some teams don't even put their hands under the center to take a kneel down at the end of games. So that's becoming more popular, and it's the total inverse of maybe 25 years ago, where you're like facing triple option teams or midline run teams every week who are doing this under center, 3 backs in the backfield stuff. Like, that's the world I came from in high school, but that's just rare. Now it's the flip side, where we would run into a shotgun team back in those days, and it would be like, all right, this is different. How do we prepare? It's the inverse now. So it's funny, the NFL, as far as 10 years ago, had a north of 1,000 snaps from under center in a straight drop back pass. Very popular NFL structure for a long time. Even into the 2010s, you would see teams get under center. And what I'm talking about is not play action, not exposing the football to the running back and then curling up in the pocket, setting up. And I'm not talking about, quick screens or anything of that nature. I'm talking about no play action, under center, straight drop back passing. It has just been something that and you would say, well, why is the NFL going away from it if there are advantages to it? Well, think about it. Kids aren't doing it in college or high school. So asking them to do it in the NFL is a risky operation, right? And you don't see, so you just see a desire to do it fading. Now, I do think some teams, the 49ers, I think the Vikings at times, and I think the Rams at times, and there have been some others, have gotten under center and decided, hey, we need to put defenses into a position where they're not thinking two things. If every time you're under center, you're either running the football or running play action, you get coded to have a reaction set up from the defense, right? Linebackers know how to play it with tempo this way, that way. They know how to punch out and play, hey, we read run for 2 steps as play action, punch out. We're going to play what's called like that robot technique, where you're literally turning your back and running underneath and breaking routes, various other things. There's some specific stuff there that if you're interested, we have it at our website. But what I'm getting at is, if you're programmed to do these two things, they're running or they're running play action. And when they run play action, we know there's only these routes they can run. And pretty much in the secondary, your thought is, I'm either slow playing the run because I either have a late fit or I'm in a contained position, right? Or I'm playing play action pass, which is downfield developing routes, because obviously you're not going to run short routes very often from one side, like a hitch, for example, if it's a long developing play action. So long-winded, but what teams are trying to do and have started to see a little bit of a turn is, hey, let's get under center in 5-step, 3-step, or even 7-step drop to make defenses have to honor that we could throw quick from under center, right? We could throw a 5-step speed out or comeback or whatever. Like, what you're trying to do in the NFL these days is make defenses think as much as you possibly can. And if you're just doing these two very specific things under center, well, they eliminate that idea that DBs and linebackers need to be prepared for quick throw from under center. And let's change that. Let's be able to straight drop. Let's be able to run normal shotgun related stuff. Because if you're in the gun, you're 5 yards back, right? So if you're in the gun, a 3-step drop probably puts you in a similar place to what maybe a 7-step drop puts you from under center. Or if you're under center, a 5-step drop probably puts you right at about the same spot that what we used to call just a punch rock or rocker step stuff puts you in the position. So what you want to do is challenge teams, as you see here, a 7-step drop, is, hey, man, we're going to do different things and challenge you to be in these certain spots. You're going to cheat one way for the run. We're going to try to throw it deep. Like the Browns started doing this, as you see in front of you, randomly back in 2023 in this Ravens game. They had Watson drop back 7 steps from under center and tried to push it vertically. And they had some opportunities. They just didn't connect on any of them. But I was like, all right, this is interesting. This is an uptick. This is just something I've never really seen them do. There's an example of quick throw from under center. So you have to have a quarterback get used to it, and then you have to be able, and like some of these are Flacco, as you'll see in the 23 reps, and then there's some examples from Jameis Winston last year too, guys who have done it, but you can get horizontal and vertical stretches in a way that teams just aren't normally prepared for, the way they would be in the gun. Hey, if they're in the gun and it's 1st and 10 or 2nd and 5, we know they like to throw quick game, right? Speed outs, hitches, settle routes over the middle, all in that 0 to 5 yard spacing, right? We know they like to do that, right? Even here's Baker Mayfield finding way back in 2020 an answer up the sideline on a corner. You could see just cheating inside. It's just a straight drop. They're just not used to playing against it. Here's a seam ball from a straight drop, 5 steps under center that you put into the end zone too. So I just think it's an underused part of what teams are doing. And I think the Browns are trying to identify ways to put it back into their fold. I think they started last year, late in the year, trying to do a little bit more of it. As I'm trying to show you some more of what they did maybe early Kevin's tenure, which is obviously a bit more Baker from 20 and 21. But, again, Watson here, it's just simple stuff where you're trying to put defenses who are saying, hey, we're going to play run because they're under center. But if we know if they go play action that we can get out of it and find an answer. And here's some Jameis Winston from just last year, right? Let's get under center, let's 7-step drop, and let's get those lateral stretches that open up some spots to find some cheap and easy yards. Offenses are trying to hunt as many times as they can for cheap and easy yards. And when you're in run looks, right, and we actually don't even give a fake, we're just dropping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, getting the ball out on time. It just catches corners, safeties, linebackers a little off balance. And I think you can find some easy yards there. So I don't think, listen, the Browns aren't going to have 100 of these in a season. Like there was only like 350 across the league last year. But in the right deep, like if you get in, hey, every time we're under center, they play a very vanilla basic cover 3, right? Or say they play quarters. Like typically you'll see teams play close coverage because they want to have more defenders towards the line of scrimmage. So they'll play cover 3 so that they have every gap fit. They are gapped out, but that leaves us with some advantageous spots where we can throw to the flat or we can throw these stretches that we can get linebackers maybe a little closer to the line of scrimmage so we can take advantage of them in high-low scenarios, stuff like that. And I think that under center drop back stuff does give you some opportunity to tendency break. And I think teams who are trying to live in under center world, not as much what the Browns did last year because we know they were doing a little more of that RPO looking, tying into more of what Ken Dorsey liked to do. But as they go back to living more under center, I think this is something they want to have in their pocket, similar to teams who do a lot of under center stuff. Those I listed earlier, Vikings, 49ers, Rams. The Saints did a lot of it last year with Clint Kubiak as their play caller as well. So yeah, keep an eye out for that when you watch games because it's not a normal thing the way say it was in 1995. Go watch the Belichick 95 Browns and they're under center. They drop. It was just a very normal thing to have quarterbacks under center, 3, 5, 7-step dropping. And it was just a part of football, right? Now you get a course of 25 years more. We're just like, hey, let's get the quarterback further from the line of scrimmage, open up his vision, et cetera, et cetera. But what we want to do now is try to break that tendency. Everything in football is cyclical. It all circles and comes around. And that's where we're at this tipping point of, I think, working its way back to, hey, this has some advantages that we have forgotten about over the years. So it's kind of funny to see that happen.
Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the defensive line and Mason Graham. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. We continue talking Browns with Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Jake, you did a thing with Mason Graham. We're going to roll some of this. Take us through what you see when you look at Mason Graham.
Let me talk through some stylistic changes that the Browns have been talking about. Jacques Césaire, their defensive line coach, brought this up. It caught my eye, similar to what Jim Schwartz had to say. So what you're seeing in college is what is known, what they like to do. Now, he went from a very good defensive coordinator in Jesse Minter, who then went to the Chargers and has done well. And then he had Wink Martindale, another NFL defensive coordinator, formerly across the league. But what they like to do was called a read approach. You see him lock the arms out, eyes in the backfield, and read the movement in the backfield. You'll see him work down the line laterally. See the arms locked out, read the flow right here, arms out, locked, shed, disengage at the end. This is a very read-based approach as your defensive tackles work, right? You see those stutter steps, a little slower off the line, reading if run, and then I'm gonna adjust course and play upfield off that, right? You see him there again, read, react, shed at the last moment. You'll see another example here probably of playing the same way. So a lot of what he did in college in his last year was very read, react, and play off of it. So he was very good, very adept at reading schemes, getting his arms locked out, bracing, and then adjusting and getting where he needed to go. Again, why I thought he was a top 5 pick and what I liked most about him was that he had a really good feel for schemes teams were throwing at him, how they were trying to block him, and what the approach was going to be situational football wise. But again, you see that locked arm out there, you're kind of holding down your gap and then adjusting accordingly. And sometimes teams will 2-gap their defensive linemen. And what I mean by that is, hey, we're going to play 2 high coverage, typically cover 2 or cover 4. That means we're not gapped out. We don't have every player for a gap in the run fit because that's how teams work. There's a run fit, and pass coverage. You got to be able to fit the run to then adjust to fit, play the pass. So long story short, and this is some of the stuff from 2 years ago now where he was a bit more attacking. The Browns have talked about a desire for Mason to play in an attacking way because that's how their defensive line plays. So think, hey, I have a gap, but I want you to shoot that gap and get vertical and play vertical football. Don't think about reading. Just think about pursue upfield and make plays in the backfield. You'll hear Jason Tarver, the linebacker coach, talk about this all the time. The defensive line is creating chaos. Their general theory is on the way to the quarterback, play the run. Create vertical chaos, and then from that vertical chaos, we will clean it up. This clean it up phrase is something Tarver and the linebackers talk about all the time. So what he's doing, Mason Graham is doing, is going from a read approach in college, which I think is a very hard thing to do. That's a very tough ask, right? Because you got to get up under the chest plate of offensive linemen, lock them up, and then shed them to make a play. It's difficult to have your eyes in the backfield while dealing with a 300-pound player right in front of you, trying to read where the football is going. So long story short, the adjustment for Mason is going from a read approach to one that doesn't ask him to do that and just asks him to create vertical chaos. I think he will be fine, and I think he will be very good at it because he will be asked to think less and use his natural skills more. The club rip, swim, speed off the snap, his ability to kind of turn that rather large frame and get skinny and create vertical pressure. So it's just a different brand of football, right? Some teams like to keep their defensive linemen anchored near the line of scrimmage to be able to adjust course for running backs, et cetera, et cetera. And then like inside of that plan is a little bit of a slower pass rush because you are reading whether it's going to be run or pass initially. So in the course of reading run or pass, you're going to be a little slower vertical to get after the quarterback, but we want to make sure we're gap sound and taking care of everything up front, and then we'll get after the quarterback. Whereas Jim Schwartz, who likes to play press man, who likes to create chaos for the quarterback right off the snap, we want our defensive tackles upfield and creating pressure as quick as we can. And you can see the vision. They know they have an edge threat nonstop in Miles, right? They're trying to get another one they feel really consistently good about, but between Wright, McGuire, and Okoronkwo, they feel like they have a three-headed monster there that can do some things off of him. But if we can get Mike Hall, who's a snap count menace who can get vertical, create pass rush immediately. They signed Malik Collins, who I thought was one of the better defensive pass rushing interior players in the free agency class. And then obviously they draft Mason Graham. They feel like, hey, we can create pressure through the middle. We want to create that because the defensive tackle is the closest player to the quarterback. And we think if we can create that with Miles' ability to turn the corner, and if you're going to force quarterbacks to drift, big number 95 is going to be waiting for you there, right? So that's their theory. And also, they want to turn pass protection away from Miles more often, right? We don't want two people on Miles 70% of the time. Can we reduce that to 50%, 40%? Because teams are worried about our interior pass rushers. Hey, Malik Collins is in and Mason Graham. Those are four hands players. What I mean by that is we can't just have him one-on-one. If we leave Mason Graham one-on-one, that's a tough situation. We need four hands on him. And if you're turning pass protection toward Mason Graham so that the center can help out with the guard on Graham, that usually leads to more islands for the other players around. And that's what they're trying to do, is have so many good players rotating in up front that it just makes pass protection less dictatable, probably the right word, so that you can get Miles into more advantageous situations where either quarterbacks are drifting because there's so much interior push and pressure, or Miles is bending that corner and pushing him up into the interior chaos. So that's the goal. It's a little different approach for Mason than what he's done, but I also think it's one that's much more it's much easier to learn than going from attack to read. If you didn't read in college, I think that would be a different ask. All right. There's a world where Jim Schwartz maybe isn't here forever, and they have to get him back into doing a little more of that because they get a different philosophical approach. That's what I like about Mason Graham, is he is a really complete player. And I am very interested when they turn off the ridiculously challenging portions of the position and let him play fast and let him play instinctual. That's where I think that there's a whole level of production that I think can even uptick from what you liked in college. So a reason I think they loved him, and a big reason why I'm very optimistic that he's going to be a nice football player in Cleveland.
So, Jake, where can people find it? As always, great stuff. Tell us where you can find that content day in and day out.
Yeah, brownsfilmbreakdown.com. We're Substack, so we offer an app that goes straight to your phone with content delivered there, content delivered to your email inbox every day, just a pod, a newsletter every day, and we do film rooms as well and try to be unique in our coverage of the Browns. So good community growing of people who care about the Browns at a pretty passionate X's and O's level, like to talk about and think about them all the time, and welcome anybody into that circle. So, yeah, just brownsfilmbreakdown.com.
Jake, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, thanks for being here, guys. Always appreciate Cleveland.com for bringing me on and doing that show. So shout out to them. Make sure to check out their YouTube channel. And then, like I said, it's a busy day. Maybe we'll have some more news tomorrow. Maybe we won't. I want to share some insights, some expanded insights on what I wrote about the defense, the things that I'm hearing about the defense, the personnel, the players, the scheme, all of that. I wrote that in parallel to the offense of what I've heard. So check that out. That's the newsletter up on Thursday. Like I said, have some more deep insights on that for you guys who are subscribers with us in tomorrow's show. So check that out. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate you much. Tell somebody you know about brownsfilmbreakdown.com. Enhance their Browns experience. I think it does a great job of that, and I think you guys are the reason it makes it so fun. Check out training camp dates. Let me know if you can't go. Gladly take them. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you all very much. Have a great day. Go Browns.